We got a lot of new polls to chew over this morning in some key battleground states that show the numbers for Hillary Clinton have ticked upward. It looks at Florida, it looks at Ohio, and it looks at Pennsylvania. Very important states in the upcoming general. Mrs. Clinton way up on Donald Trump in Florida. The two candidates, though, in a dead heat in Ohio. And in Pennsylvania, a statistical tie there as well. Take a look back at 2012 and what the numbers looked like when President Obama ran for re-election against Mitt Romney. You can see that the president held a hefty lead in all three of those states pretty much at this stage of the game. So let's bring in the doctor, see what he thinks about this. Larry Sabato, director of the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia. Larry, good morning. Good to see you this morning.
Good morning, Martha.
So some initial thoughts on the comparison between Romney, Obama at this point in the race.
Well, they're very different races. I'm going to tell you right now, Martha, I'm going to quibble with all three of those Quinnipiac polls. I do not believe Hillary Clinton is up on Donald Trump by 8 points in Florida. I believe it is closer than that, maybe 3 or 4. Florida has been a squeaker 3 of the last 4 presidential elections. Nor do I believe there's a tie in Ohio and Pennsylvania. I think that Clinton has a wafer-thin lead there of perhaps 3 points, somewhere in that vicinity. Yeah. So I simply don't buy those results, and here's why.
Yeah, why?
The best results, Martha, that we have are a series of excellent national surveys that are well done, that give us a polling average lead for Clinton of about 6%. Now, if Clinton is leading by 5 or 6 or 7, whatever you choose, whatever number you choose, nationally, you have to apply that to individual states, their demographics, their prior voting behavior. And so these results don't make sense. And I'm gonna stick with it. That's my position, and I'm going to stick with it.
All right, let's look at some of the internals of this poll, though, because they're pretty interesting. Because when you see a bit of a change, like what we're seeing in some of these states and in some of the national polls as well, you got to ask yourself what's underlying it. Who's better prepared to be president? She does exceedingly well against him in Florida, in Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Who is more intelligent? She's got 53 to 33% in Florida against Donald Trump. Who has higher moral standards? A little bit tighter here, but still she is ahead by a sizable margin in that one. The only one where he does better than she does, and he does better in Ohio and Pennsylvania, on who is more inspiring. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, I don't know about the moral standards one, but on the other ones, Martha, I think you and I could have sat here and guessed the basic results, maybe not the precise numbers, but it's obvious that Clinton is more experienced and better prepared. It's obvious that Trump is a better public speaker than Hillary Clinton is. These things are not a surprise, nor do I think they are necessarily the reasons why people vote for or against these two candidates.
All right, let's take a look at this one because, you know, when you look at the last 3 weeks, there's been a lot of discussion about how the Trump campaign has handled things since he set up the nomination, which should be a honeymoon sweet spot for any candidate. But this clearly tripped him up. The comments about the judge being Mexican, which he was not, he was born in Indiana, and were those comments racist? 58% say yes in Florida, roughly the same in Ohio and in Pennsylvania. Impact from that comment?
Well, people on the Clinton side would say, well, you see, those comments produced our 8-point lead in Florida. Well, the same percentages approximately in Ohio and Pennsylvania were concerned about those comments, and yet it didn't produce a lead for Clinton in either of those states, if you believe the Quinnipiac polls. So, you know, what really drives voters? And I just always go back to fundamentals. Basically, it's party identification, and 90+% of Americans have one, whether they admit it or not. And then I think other things like terrorism and the economy play a major role. Other things, less so.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because in the other takeaway in the Quinnipiac release was that Democrats feel better about Hillary Clinton than Republicans do about Donald Trump. So you've got the potential stay-home issue. And, you know, like I keep saying this morning, we've got a long way to go in this race and a number of huge moments, conventions and VP picks and debates and all of that. But, you know, enthusiasm level from his own party is clearly an issue, Larry.
Well, enthusiasm is an issue, but let me note, I think I'm quarrelsome this morning, Martha. I apologize to you for that.
I love it.
But I'm going to quarrel simply because I have seen a series of surveys that are well run that show that Clinton is getting close to 90% support among Democrats, despite Bernie Sanders still being in the race, and that Donald Trump is in mid-80s and in some cases upper 80s with Republicans, despite all the disagreement with his candidacy. We live in very partisanly polarized times, and it's having the usual effect.
All right, look into your crystal ball for me before I let you go, because I've got about 30 seconds left here. How do you think this plays out over the rest of the summer?
Well, I tell you, those conventions are going to be more important than usual, and particularly for Trump. That's his chance to rewrite the script if he can. If he can project a strong image, a good image, a happy image. For Clinton, you know, she's been around for 25 years, and pretty much people have already picked up sides on that. But I think those conventions are important, and obviously the choices for VP. They don't move a lot of votes, but they affect the image of the presidential candidates.
Absolutely. And if he starts to mention cabinet picks, or he gets people standing up there on that stage next to him that are going to be advising him on national security and on terrorism and those kind of issues, that could have a big role in terms of substantiating how people feel about him as a possible president as well. Larry, thank you. Quarrelsome Larry.
Thank you, Martha.